Hello, 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 and welcome to episode number 37 of the Wonder of Stuff podcast. Vodcast, whatever. Choose your type of casting. This is broadcast live on Google Hangouts on air every week. Actually, I've just seen something. This is really weird. I'm mirrored. Anyway, that's weird. Anyway,
so that's all right.
Eh?
Not for me. So
not for you. That's very strange. So anyway, this short stuff. Things we do with podcast every night, every week. Oh God, I've gone. Every week we do a vodcast, right? This is what you're watching now. Every week. Normally it's on Sundays. Tonight it's on Mondays. This is my colleague Richard Smith. Say hello, Richard.
Hello, Richard.
Doesn't work the same. Ross is not here tonight because Ross is on holiday. Richard wasn't here last night because he was ill. And tonight we're going to do the very first double header of the Wonder of Stuff vodcast. So this should be interesting. It probably won't last 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Unless we talk bollocks. We can talk, we're pretty good at talking bollocks. So it might last for 45 minutes. Anyway, we're going to start with Richard. So I can sort out all my notes and stuff. And this one is called Stratolaunch. Would you like to tell us more, please?
Yes. Stratolaunch Systems is the company, and this was announced back in December 2011. It's the co-founder of Microsoft, Paul Allen, very famous guy. I think he was quite well regarded at Microsoft, and his latest endeavor is this one. So basically, it's a multi-staged thing. It's an aircraft with a launch vehicle, so it flies high into the stratosphere, hence Stratolaunch, with a conventional aircraft design, or a twist on a conventional aircraft design, which the idea is that it takes most of the energy out of the rocket element, so you can have it in multiple stages. So you fly with the rocket up into the stratosphere. That means you can use Boeing engines, Boeing equipment in a customized aircraft. Yes, the aircraft's all new, but you can use proven systems, which reduces the development costs. So they've basically cannibalized two Boeing 747-800s, use the gear and the engines out of those. It flies up, and then the rocket part, all of the energy from that can be used to get the speed up, and obviously or reduce the cost, whichever you prefer. And that's the project, and it's estimated to be it was the first targeted test flight was 2015. They say that 80% of it's fabricated, 40% assembled, and they're on target for a test flight in 2016.
But to be fair, how does this differ from something like SpaceX?
Well, actually, it was a combined thing with SpaceX. I guess the main difference is the scale of it. I'll share a picture in a second. But if successful, when it does fly its first test flight, it will be the largest aircraft by wingspan ever to have flown. So that's it there. The blue, not very easy to see, but probably the most well-known aircraft to us would be the one in blue there, which is a Boeing 747-8, which is by no means a small aircraft. And that imposed clearly in the white with a black outline is the Stratolaunch, and that's how
this is. I've just found a photograph. Let's see if I can get that on there, because this is really weird, because it actually looks like a bit of a 747. Yeah. I mean, obviously
it is. It's six 747 engines.
So this bit here is definite. This here looks like a 747.
Yeah.
And you've got the engines on each side. It looks asymmetric.
I think that's just the angle.
Is it?
From the design view, it looks symmetric.
Oh, right. Okay. Oh, cool. So, cheap space flight. Are they aiming to get it into Earth orbit or beyond, or how?
Well, into the stratosphere, and then after that, the launch vehicle. They were doing it jointly with SpaceX, and they were using the Pegasus solid fuel engines, Pegasus 2. But what they said was that was not achieving their design economic goals. So basically, SpaceX were hell bent on the Mars angle, whereas this is more multi-use, as cost efficient as possible, and it'll use the design they've gone for now is 6 RLC-10-1 dual motor liquid fuel cryogenic rocket engines. So that's the technology that you might remember from Saturn. The Saturn rockets that NASA used to go at the moon. They were cryogenic. Just means fuel that you store at an extremely low temperature, basically.
I mean, this. So, it's not. See, originally, I thought this sounded like sort of a cheap way of getting around the Earth by going into the stratosphere. So you could go up, across, and then down again. For like you could go from UK to Australia in a couple of hours. But this is not it. This is actually a full blown launch vehicle for a rocket.
Yeah, and rather than using the so basically you need a massive runway because it's obviously going to be extremely heavy. I didn't write it down, but it was something like I'm not even going to guess actually because I haven't written it down.
Heavy,
but it was very
heavy,
very very heavy, and so it needs an enormous runway. But clearly the advantage is that you don't need all that solid rocket fuel, all that massive cost and waste, frankly, if this works. So you can just take off over a long runway, take your time, get up there, and then all the fuel that you've... Obviously, you're going to have to alter the design. There's going to be some design compromise because you have to fit it on this plane as large as it's going to be. But then all of that fuel expense, which is a lot of the expense, is then used just to shoot off from there. So maybe you can achieve higher speeds. I'm not sure.
So obviously, Virgin Galactic and SpaceX, they actually put the money where their mouth is. They actually got things that can fly. How far down the road are these guys?
Well, 80% fabricated and test flights scheduled for 2016.
Interesting.
So we shall see.
So we're in exciting times for privateers in the space race then.
Well, also the competition aspect of it's very encouraging, isn't it? Because no one's going to be sitting on the laurels if there's this much competition. And of course, they're all vying for investment and be the first to do X, Y, and Z. So yeah,
it's even more interesting when you couple the fact that you've got multiple launch vehicles from multiple companies, so you can play one off against each other. It's basically like going over the road and buying yourself a fridge freezer. You can say, well, Joe Bloggs over there have got one and they've cut tenner off. So you could do the same with this, and when you couple that with something like that, we've covered the CubeSat technology.
Yeah.
If you need to get stuff into space, the cost's just going to go down.
Yeah.
Cool. Excellent.
And
Sounds
also,
good.
And also collaborating. Okay, the SpaceX collaboration with Stratolaunch didn't work out, but it got them somewhere along the way, and hopefully there's more of that as well. It'll
also coming at the right time for NASA, who are really struggling to find launch vehicles now.
Yeah.
I was reading an article last week about how it really they had to give something like $490 million to Russia to make sure they had an adequate supply to the ISS.
Yeah.
And that really that's stuck in their throats somewhat.
What's interesting about this as well is that it's kind of not new ideas. I mean, those are largely 747s, which have been around a long time. Very, there's a good reason why from an engineering point of view, because they're proven, and they're going to use all the different aspects, the landing gear, the avionics, the flight deck, everything from them, which is proven, adapted to a new design. So that's just recycling that. And in terms of the fancy sounding cryogenic rockets, they go all the way back to World War II, so they're not new either.
That is true, yeah. I'm sure Airbus were wishing that they chose their A380 as the basis because nobody else is buying them.
I know, and Rolls-Royce are struggling at the moment as well with their commercial engines because they've got a new order book. Their order book's all filled out for 2016, but it seems that they're being hurt by, oil commodity, but also...
But oil's cheap at the moment?
Well, just the fact that everyone wants the new one, so they're waiting for the new one.
Right.
So they've had to put out multiple profit warnings, so their share prices really come down.
It's very bizarre because both Rolls-Royce are in a really interesting position because they have their engines on both the Airbus and on the Boeing. So for them to put out a profit warning, that must be really, really bad in the.
I think it's just as a result of people holding back because they want the new engine, basically. So it's not that people are going to their competitors, and in fact, it's when this new engine comes out for Rolls-Royce, it's really going to solidify that place in the market, apparently, because it's leaps ahead of everyone else. So that'll be interesting for them. Buy Rolls-Royce now.
Yeah. Well, what your dalliance in the stock market? Let's just gloss over that, shall we?
Yeah.
Because, as you've said, if you held on to some of the shares that we had back in 2007, was it? It must have been, I think.
With 2020 hindsight, isn't it?
We would have cleaned up. Yeah, right. Okay. Well, that's a good start for the show. A new element into the space race. A new launch vehicle. It's possibly going to be hitting the skies next year. So it's moving on to my topic next. Now, my topic is about octopuses, and before everybody starts, it is octopuses. It's not octopi. You can even call it octopods, but it's definitely not octopi, because octopi is, if you go back in the etymology of the whole word, that's a Latin derivation, while octopods is a Greek derivation. So it's definitely octopuses or octopods. Get that out of the way. Okay, so octopuses. Why have humans have always been interested in octopuses, not just for putting on the barbecue, but they've been interested in the creature themselves because they're so strange to our eyes, and they've got this element of intelligence about them, and how they move around and change colour and all these things. So the story I've got is about the genes of an octopus, but I'll give you some background to the octopus first. So what do we know about octopuses? Well, we know that they're mollusks. They've got no internal skeleton. They're actually cephalopod mollusks, so they share lots in common with squids and cuttlefish. For a mollusk, they're very intelligent. They are the most intelligent mollusk around. But when in terms of other beings, well, they've got about 500 million neurons, and a cat has about 760 million neurons. So they've got a certain amount of intelligence.
Got to be the most intelligent invertebrate, I would have.
Yes, probably. I think so. But they're a fair way from us. I mean, I think we have about 86 billion neurons or something. So, but still got a certain level.
What do you do with it?
Yeah, that's not about big numbers, is it? No. So they've already proven that they have a lot of dexterity. So they've been shown how they can put themselves in and out of jars and screw tops on jars and unbolt various things from tanks that they've been stored in, and they can solve. Predict the World Cup. Well, I was going to say solve problems, but I was hoping slightly more than the World Cup. And they can make decisions based on stimuli and what's happened to them in the past. So in some way they've got some sort of short and possibly a long-term memory. They're a bit strange in that they've got 3 hearts. They've got a camera-like eye, so it's probably the closest of any mollusk and possibly invertebrate to how our eye works. Very camera-like. But they've got autonomous neurons in all of their tentacles as well. So although they've got a central brain which surrounds their esophagus, they've got all these neurons in all the tentacles. And 3 hearts. I've already said 3 hearts. Anyway. So the real core of this story is they've finally mapped the genome of the octopus. There was some students and some PhD students from the University of California, the Okinawa Institute of Science and Technology in Japan, and the University of Chicago. It was published this month in Nature periodical. And what did they find? Well, very bizarre. They found parts of the genome that other invertebrates have, the octopus have, but they're dramatically expanded. Some of the genes that they've got are actually rearranged. They've got expansion of genes to do with neural development, and it's thought to be this neural development area of the genes was up until now thought to be exclusive to vertebrates. So invertebrates to have them this is really new. They have things called protocaderons, which are involved in signaling between neurons. They have things that scientists have dubbed zinc fingers, probably because they have a lot of zinc in them, but they're involved in embryonic and nervous and nervous tissues and brain development. So that's the first thing. There's other things around as well that they found. They found some genes that they I mean, most when you get I haven't done this before. It's not something that you can get from W.H. Smith, but I expect that when you're mapping the genome of a creature, you'll see certain patterns that you think, yeah, this is the same as this is the same as this. But there are certain genes that they found in this octopus genome that there isn't any direct counterparts in any other animal. So what they're assuming is that these genes are doing the things that octopuses are famous for. So the fact that their tentacles can regrow might be controlled by these genes. The fact that they've got adaptive coloration, so they can hide and change their color. All these sort of things. They can do propulsion in the water as well. And these are all areas that they hope that this genome mapping can help humans in the future.
So you were saying about them being closely related to cuttlefish and squid, and obviously those traits that you just mentioned there. I don't know about tentacle regrowth, but jetting through the water and the camouflage is certainly what you see in cuttlefish and squid, isn't it? So
yeah, absolutely.
They haven't mapped those yet, then I take it.
No. I think they've mapped the bits that they expected to see, but the ones that they genuinely never expected to see, it's going to take more research into those.
Right. So it might be that they're not unique in that if once they map squid and cuttlefish, they might be quite common traits between them. But compared to everything else, these seem to be an independent group.
So far, yeah. So far, it seems that to be honest, I don't actually know if they've mapped the genome of the cuttlefish or the squid. I don't know how far they are, whether they've done that. If they have done that, then they've found this is unique.
I've got a feeling that you would do octopus first because it is really an interesting animal, isn't it, to do? Yeah. I suppose. But they are absolutely fascinating animals. Yeah.
I know when I said this, I was going to cover this at work, and normally I don't tell everybody what I cover, but I said I was going to cover this at work, and everybody said, "Oh yes, they're very nice on a barbecue."
And fantastic videos of them like adapting to their surroundings, where you can look and you just can't see them. They're that good.
Well, there's a couple of apocryphal stories, and I don't know whether this is true or not, but there's one story where they were in a sort of a water, an aquatic wildlife sort of tank, and when they went home, when all of the staff went home and they came back in the morning, they found that all of the water the whole of the outside of the tank had been flooded, and had found that the octopus had gone in, found where the water feed is, uncoupled it and pushed it over the edge. So it was stuffs like that. There's other ones where I've seen octopuses shooting jets of water to actually stop lights. So they're cracking light bulbs with water and stuff to make it dark and stuff. Loads of stuff like that.
You never hear. I mean, obviously, as you know, I've kept lots of exotic animals and been involved in that trade, and it doesn't seem to be one that's popular in the hobby. And I don't know whether that's either hard to come by or whether the husbandry is just really difficult. I don't know, but be an interesting animal to have in a tank in your home and see how it behaves, wouldn't it?
Yeah, but I mean, you've got to. I think you would have to have a decent sized tank.
Oh, obviously, if you could provide an adequate environment.
And I think that's possibly what it is. I mean, there's a difference from having a gerbil in something.
You can get quite small ones though. You can get small ones.
Yeah, well, I think this one, the ones that were doing the Californian 2-spot octopus, I think it was, and the only reason they did that one because it fits quite well into a tank in a laboratory.
Right.
So
is that the one that's venomous then?
I don't think so.
Called
never
2 or something like that. That's highly.
I would have thought that the paper would have mentioned it, and it didn't.
No, probably not that one then. Yeah, but, there's probably thousands of them, no doubt.
Yeah, absolutely. But and I guess because they're all close, the cephalopods are all very closely related. I wonder if there's squids that are very close to octopuses and vice versa. You know, that whether there is one in the middle that's the link between them.
Yeah.
So.
I did actually read that. I didn't realise that it sequenced the genome, but I did see a daft headline saying scientists have decided that they're aliens, and I was thinking, I'm not even going to read that because there's no way that's the case. But
yeah, somebody said that again at work today when I was.
The genome is alien from what we've seen before, is what they're saying, basically.
Yes, yeah, which is, I think this is what they're saying. There are genes in there that they've never seen before, or they can't relate them to other animals that are currently out there.
Yeah.
But, you know, I think they were taking the alien word as a literal thing.
Yeah.
Very interesting. You know, I think you could genuinely sort of like stare at a tank with an octopus in for a good few hours and not get bored. The octopus, on the other hand, might get completely cheesed off, but
they're very good at getting into very, very surprisingly small. You kind of expect that they could, with no skeleton, that they could get into small places. But
it's interesting though. There are some octopuses that do have the very faint historical skeleton.
Right.
So the remnants of a skeleton.
Oh, really? What? Yeah. Vestigial skeleton?
Yeah, yeah.
All right.
But most of them are completely without.
What evolved from a vertebrate? That would suggest then. Or they've had a go at having a skeleton at some point and then given it.
Yeah, maybe it didn't work. Maybe they found they couldn't get themselves in the little cracks.
I might do some reading up on the history of octopus evolution because that would be quite interesting, actually.
Yeah. So that's my topic. I think the thing that, because like we've said before, normally there's no why they're doing this. Well, they're doing this because obviously it enhances research in other areas. If you do a genome mapping of an interesting animal, then hopefully the things that come off of it are a little bit more important. So what they're hoping that this research will do is to help engineers designing flexible arms for undersea robots, so robots without joints. We've already said regeneration of limbs. If they can get genes from that and go down that route, that would be quite cool. Their suckers, they found the suckers on the tentacles actually sense chemicals in the water, which was obviously very good again for water pollution. We've covered their eyes, but we've covered the propulsion system as well to jet around water that is in common with squids and cuttlefish. So there's quite a wide range of areas that they could follow this research up with.
Yeah, actually, it's funny because I think squid are considered quite dumb by comparison, so they're obviously quite far removed in that sense. So they might be part of the same group, but I think squid are kind of considered like quite rudimentary animals, whereas octopus are obviously the opposite.
Yeah, it's funny because when I was trying to do a bit of research about finding out where they are in the neurons stakes. Squids, cuttlefish were never there, but the octopus was always on all of the sites that I went to. The octopus was always listed as.
I think it's just remarkably high for an invertebrate, isn't it?
It is, yeah, it is. And also that it's very strange for a human to think that it's an invertebrate. It's got no skeleton, yet it's got a surprisingly high amount of brain power. Some of it is obviously dissipated, and the neurons are dissipated around the tentacles, and that's quite unique. But they do have a central brain, and to obviously to have an eye which is very similar to ours, you're naturally curious about what sort of information it's processing.
Yeah.
Does it process the level that we have?
Yeah.
Probably not, but
well, it might do. I mean, there's animals where if it's advantageous to see, like the mantis shrimp can see many more spectrums of colour than we can, so it may see, I don't know about octopus, but I know the mantis shrimp sees a lot better than we do.
Interesting. Well, in a different way, though, I guess.
No, it sees everything we see, and then it sees additional.
Really?
It sees ultraviolet and infra. You know, I don't know about infrared, but like down low and up high in the spectrum. Yeah, it does. So it sees all the colours we see, plus an additional few million.
you just learn stuff on the Wonder Stuff every week. Yeah, didn't know. Right. Okay. So that's the octopus, and that's the octopus genome. So far we've covered getting things into space. We've covered things in water. What's the next one there?
Well, it's a bit of a tragic one. There's been these explosions in. Oh, you might know how to pronounce it better than I do, because I haven't actually listened to any news reports. I've just read up about it. Is it Tianjin?
Tianjin, promise. Yeah.
Yeah. Which is a port. Town city in China. So there's been two.
It's about. I think it's about 40 miles away from Beijing.
Yes, that's right.
Very close, quite close to Beijing.
Yeah. This is the latest picture that's come out of it. So I don't know if you can see there, but this is the aftermath, and it's quite catastrophic. There's the site of the explosions in the red square there. The shipping containers off to the side, and a massive vehicle park there in front, which has also been destroyed. So it was two explosions. The first of which was pretty large. It was estimated to be a magnitude of 2.3 earthquake and equivalent to 3 tons of TNT going off. That went off at 11:30 local time. And what had preceded that was basically a fire at 2250. And what it's now coming out is that the first responders to that couldn't keep the fire from spreading, and they may have actually contributed to it being worse by adding water. I don't know how much of this is speculation, how much of this is confirmed, but that the chemical reactions have been maybe accelerated by the adding of water to the situation. The second explosion followed the first 30 seconds later, and that was equivalent to 21 tons of TNT. Fireballs, if you've seen the videos, were hundreds of meters high. It was absolutely massive explosion.
I think now my good lady wife does a lot of dangerous goods transportation. That is her area, and she basically she wasn't surprised when this happened. It's very tragic, but she wasn't surprised because China have always had a flagrant disregard to any sort of health and safety, and basically what's coming out now is that warehouse had loads of chemicals which were oxidizing, loads of chemicals which were like you said, and I'm pretty sure that this is now as near as you're ever going to get from China as fact, that the first responders, the first fire and rescue team on the ground did randomly spray water on stuff that they didn't know what was in there.
Well, and not even their fault, because there weren't nobody, even in the buildings nearby, the tenants nearby, nobody was told that there was even a danger there. And like I said, the reports coming out of it are that compressed air, oxidizing agents, toxic chemicals mixed in the same warehouse, absolute no.
And also not just that though, but they've got there's cyanide in there and all sorts of really, really, really noxious stuff.
Yeah.
Which were safe when the outer structure of the containers were safe.
Yeah.
But if you put them next to flammable and explosive and you have a fire, then they need to be completely separated.
And I don't know what the initial. I mean, I don't think they know what the initial cause was. Initially, they were saying munitions being transported in, but I think it's going to be difficult to get the truth out of that. But as it unfolds, the death count's now up to 114 confirmed, 772 injuries, most of which were the exploding glass, 70 missing, so no doubt they'll be added to the death toll pretty much. And most of them have been firefighters, unfortunately. 21 of the confirmed dead are firefighters, and I believe 70 of the missing also will be mostly firefighters.
Put that photo up again, Richard, because the cars that you saw were all. I'll just speak a minute and get it on.
The cars, after the two initial explosions, what I didn't mention was because they couldn't contain the fire and because of concerns around the chemicals that may be still affecting people in the area, including the firefighters. Some of the firefighting was withdrawn and the fire was allowed to spread through that car park there, and there was 8 separate explosions, different types of explosions going on, as well as the minor ones clearly from the cars exploding. So
well, here the thing is, it's not actually a car park, believe it or not. They were all brand new Volkswagens.
Yeah.
So
that's the crater that's come out, I think, yesterday.
Wow.
That's the obviously the secondary explosion. That's obviously the reverse angle of what we saw before there. Like I say, the brand new VW.
I mean, I take it most people, or if not everybody, has seen the explosion. They were just, on par with what I would have thought a nuclear explosion would have looked like, because it was just white. It's
interesting that you say that. It had that sort of characteristic mushroom cloud going on, didn't it? Yeah. And I was looking for scale, and I was thinking, wow, is this getting on for a small nuclear blast? But it's nowhere near, by the way. It was massive. You're talking 21 tons of TNT. I mean, it's megatons for even the smallest nuclear bombs, just to put things into context. So it's nowhere near the amount of energy. But for a conventional non-wartime explosion, it's a big one, definitely.
So it's funny because my wife and I were discussing the outcomes of this. Now, obviously, it's horrific for all of the people who were and the families of those who were killed. It's going to be pretty horrific for the people who lived in and around the city, because they've got very noxious fumes still around and all over, and the dust is around. But also for the rest of the world, and on slightly more inconvenient, rather than of an emergency, an issue like life or death, is that because the city was and the port was such a big one in China, it was one of the biggest. Lots of things will in a couple of months' time will be starting to dry up around Europe. So I remember that when they had earthquakes in Japan a few years ago, when some of the hard disk factories were affected, and we had a shortage of hard disks in Europe. So stuff like that it'll be coming in the next few months.
Yeah.
So,
although I guess one positive, I mean, it's hard to see a positive in these type of situations, but to me, it strikes me that just seeing the numbers and also comparing it to other disasters, for the size and scale of the explosion being in a city as well, the numbers are very low. I mean, they'll obviously rise, but certainly if it was a more densely populated area, especially given the fact that it's China and the size of some Chinese cities, I think the fact that it was late at night and it was an industrial part, that most of that seemed to be occupied during the day. I mean, obviously there was buildings nearby and 114 people have been killed. However, the numbers could have been, when you first saw the size of the explosion, you were thinking thousands. So
because they were originally saying, there's 7 people dead, and it's like, well, obviously that's going to rise, because there's no way there's. But like you say, I
was thinking it would be hundreds and hundreds and hundreds by this stage. So, but yeah, and another interesting aspect is that seemingly, because they're so used to pollution, they might have an issue where people are sort of a bit blasé about it, because they're used to high pollutants in the air over there. They don't really have the same knee-jerk reaction from chemicals that maybe in this situation would be quite a healthy reaction to have, given how unknown and how dangerous it could well turn out to be. The Chinese, I'm making a generalization, but the Chinese, because they live in often areas, especially this close to the capital, that are bad for pollution, they take it with a pinch of salt, which could be hazardous for their health, certainly.
There's another whole other aspect about this, and this is about the Chinese control of media as well, because they the city had their own television and radio stations that weren't broadcasting what was happening outside. They were actually showing cartoons when this was happening, because they couldn't get the right okay from Beijing to show this. Because of the Communist Party state, everything has to be signed in triplicate before anything goes out.
Yeah.
So there were people. Obviously,
that was unique to this. That was just, you like to say, that's just policy, isn't it? That wasn't it.
I don't think specifically in this case. Yeah, I don't think specifically in this case it was anything untoward trying to stifle the news. I think it was just
that's the procedure.
But because of the delay of getting this information, they couldn't get that information out to the people who were watching.
Yeah.
So what should have happened was they should have all told everybody to move outside of the city. But it was days before this started happening, the evacuation. So there was obviously a lot of pollutants at that time, which people were, still in the city where they should have been moving out.
And I'm not sure that. I'm speculating a bit here, but from what I was reading when I was doing the research, the deaths seem to have been as a result of the explosions and fires. So I don't think we're seeing the deaths from the toxins and what have you yet. So their contribution to the overall toll might still not be factored in. So we'll have to see.
And I guess that might take some time as well, because. Didn't you give a stat a few months ago about the total number of deaths from Chernobyl?
I think it was Ross talking about
that. Was it
one.
Ross? And it was like considerably lower than we ever thought.
I think it was just, I don't know if we were talking about that on the show, but we were just talking about that offline. But yeah, the thing is with that, I think you and I countered Ross's point of, well, we'll just never know. And especially when it's countries where it's maybe not as democratic as you would like. Yeah. You don't always, well, even in democracies, you don't always find out the true numbers, but the numbers are often downplayed, aren't they? So and also it's just impossible to know. I died 10 years earlier. I mean, how, you could do a correlation with another city, but you'll never really know the effect, will you? And people move around, and so we'll never know the true harm that these sorts of things cause. But yeah, tragic.
Yeah, and that's another depressing note to end on. We're getting good at this. I don't have a joke.
Well, we're just like any news show, really, aren't we? I mean, kind of that's the news, isn't it?
Yeah, but they normally have an "and finally."
I think it'll be interesting.
Surfing penguin or something.
I think China's going through a very interesting time. They're losing their edge in terms of exports and in terms of their place in the economy. They're having to prop up their own currency. They're in this sort of crossroads between do we keep propping it up or do we fully go into the open market? And if we go into the open market, do we have to embrace capitalism and all that brings and more open society? Then how they handle this situation's all in that mix. So it's an interesting time for them.
It is interesting, and I think partially because they've from the time when the Communist Party decided that they were going to and you say embrace capitalism. You can't say they haven't embraced capitalism. Although the Communist Party leaders would have said they haven't. The fact that you can walk down some shops in Beijing and you've got Prada and a Range Rover dealer and a Rolls Royce dealer, that's fairly capitalism. That's not you can choose any car as long as it's a Lada.
Yeah, maybe domestically, but in terms of their stock exchange, it's not free and open to foreign investors. So it's
right. Okay. Yeah. So entirely, all of the walls down.
Well, yeah.
This might, in some way, this explosion might have start people, because I heard there was somebody been interviewed on, I think it was the BBC World Service, and they were local. They lived in the city, and them and a few other people were openly criticising the government for not informing them of what was going on, not informing them of any of this, and you know, they had no idea what was in there. And now, I've never really heard open criticism of the government on an international broadcaster before. It might be the start of it, or of course they might.
I'm noticing that as well, yeah. And there's the reactionary comments and footage and stuff coming out of there, which just seems to be, I don't know if it's a trend or whether it's just that our media is more interested in reporting it now or what. But from our perspective, it certainly does look like that, doesn't it?
Yeah, and the fact is that I had an interesting statistic about the percentage of internet savvy people in China who have bypassed the Great Firewall of China and are going out via VPNs is rapidly increasing. And most people, if they actually want to, can get access to Twitter and Facebook and yada yada yada. So you can't stifle. Although I have to say, North Korea are doing quite a good job. But
yeah, they haven't got 1 billion people, and they haven't got a new middle class coming up through and all this sort of thing. So, you know, you've got a few 100 million people with those capabilities on the horizon. It's near impossible to keep that. I think they'll kind of either embrace capitalism or it'll embrace them. I think it's one way or the other, isn't it?
Yeah, it's true enough. Right, well, that's probably the end of today's show. And to be fair enough, we've done quite well to get to this time. Yeah. And so this has been episode 37. I was going to say a slightly cut down version, but only by a couple of minutes. And we hope you've enjoyed it. We've again enjoyed making it. As always, I'll say yet again, come to the blog, wonderofstuff.blogspot.com. You'll see all of the show notes. You'll see a complete list of all of our archived material. If you want to give us some feedback, the email address is wonderofstuff@gmail.com. We welcome your feedback, and any questions, and we'd like to pose them on subsequent episodes. We all have access to the Gmail mailbox, so please give us some feedback. We've got Twitter handles as well. My Twitter handle still doesn't work because I'm still using Firefox instead of Chrome. Damn Google. But yeah, just get in touch, because as much as we would still do these things without anybody watching, but it'd be nice to know that people are at least enjoying it, or if they're not enjoying it, tell us why you're not enjoying it, and we'll ignore you. Okay, so next time, hopefully we're back on the Sunday night, and I think we have a special guest, don't we, Richard?
Should have, yeah.
Should have already. So we'll have it'll be Richard and I again, and a special guest for episode 38 of The Wonder Stuff next Sunday. Okay, thank you for watching, listening, wherever you are, and may we say goodbye.
Goodbye.